Hey, how's it going today? Welcome to Conical Supremacy. Good afternoon, good evening, good morning, wherever you're at, and thanks so much for tuning in today. We've got a really great guest for you today, and so I hope some stimulating conversation on what's going on during these COVID times, and also what can be done. Uh, we've had a couple of really great guests over the last couple of weeks. And I'd like to take a little bit of time just to introduce my cohort in crime here, the guy who thought this up. Just a wonderful cat, Mr. Doug Tornquist. Hey.
You this week?
Hey, man. So how was your week this week?
My week was just fine. It was the first week without school. We finished at USC on Friday. So I thought I'd have a lot of time, but I don't. I'm doing all this other stuff that I couldn't do. It's nice to have all this extra time and a big break until we go back in January. What else? Worked a little bit.
So before the show, we were talking just a little bit. So you've been doing some recording with some students.
Yep.
And today you had to go get somebody set up for working on his DMA. And I really, it sparked an idea in my head. For those people out there who are trying to get this stuff together, is there a certain repertoire that you would recommend as far as trying to get into a DMA position and or into an undergraduate position right now? I mean, obviously there's standard rep that needs to be done, and undergrad, they pretty much are set, but the DMA is kind of a different thing. Why, with your student today, why did you pick the pieces that he's playing, I guess would be the question for you.
Well, I don't think he'd mind if I told you. He was recording two pieces with piano, and okay, that in itself is monumental right now, because where are you going to find a room, a piano, a pianist? Well, luckily, we have a friend who basically gave us the key to the church, and I have another friend who's a pianist, and she agreed to wear a mask. So we got that space done. Now, as far as pieces to do, I always tell my students, just pick something that is representative of what you're doing. And furthermore, think about, okay, someone in my position, your position, listening to 20, 30 tapes, what's going to stick out? Do I want to hear the same very standard pieces over and over again? Or I'd almost rather hear something that's pretty far outside of the box. What is an interest of yours that other people aren't doing? In this case today, my student decided to record a piece from the Wilder Second Sonata, which most people don't know. It's an obscure.
Well, I know you're a big Alec Wilder fan and love his writing. So that's kind of what's knowing that. And when you mentioned it earlier, I was going, all right, so Doug is pulling out the really good stuff that doesn't get played enough because of our similar tastes. I mean, I totally agree with you that, I have a student right now that we have to go film and for an audition playing the Hinnemouth.
Yeah.
And luckily we worked that out, and today was rehearsal and Hannah just stuck it. I mean, I got to hand it to her. Holy wow. I mean, what a great player. And that's actually two solo pieces combined into one, in my opinion. It's like we were talking with Bruce last week about his concerto for tuba, how he envisioned it with the piano player having something to do rather than just accompany.
Okay.
And the Wilder is a similar idea behind that, where there's stuff going on where the voices are talking to each other.
Well, we should actually do a whole show on Alec Wilder.
We should. Well, as soon as we get those duets done, and Yeah. Well, maybe this week. I'm feeling kind of saucy. My horn came back from the shop better than it's been, so I'm a really happy guy right now.
Well,
So
that. Yeah. No, it is definitely the season for people to get together their audition materials. And this year, I don't think there'll be too many in-person auditions. Everything's going to be recorded or even Zoom auditions, which, let's face it, is probably a great relief to most students. Why should you have to fly across the country with your horns at vast expense when I think a Zoom audition can do the job?
absolutely, and I think you're absolutely correct. It's too bad back in the day when you and I were looking around that they didn't have the same type of technology, because it was get in the car or get on the plane, and it usually was get in the car because you're bringing a couple of axes with you,
Oh, sure.
and then drive, and then take a whole week to go take care of business and be tired when you go audition and all that stuff. So I don't know, man. This is kind of an interesting thing. You told me that you were working yesterday. Yes.
Oh, yeah. Mhm.
Lucky. Do you want to
I,
talk about it?
yeah, it was a film um, with yeah, the famous well-known composer James Newton Howard, and it's a Disney movie. I'm not sure when it'll be coming out. Um, we had not seen him for well over, I think it was a year. We did a little something on Jungle Cruise way a year ago when they were going to have more sessions, and then those canceled. Anyway, we were able to go over to Sony yesterday. It was just a brass session yesterday. Given the way things are now, they don't put us all in the room. Sony, I think I've been in there with an orchestra of like 108. I think it's the biggest I've ever been in there.
Huh.
The room can accommodate it, but with the COVID protocols, they don't want to overload the room, so they'll do the strings for a few days, and then the woodwinds. I think there were only 8 woodwinds, and then we did the brass yesterday. Let's see, it was 4, 6, 10. It was 14, 15 people in the room. Yeah.
So when you're doing that type of thing without the strings and everybody being there like it used to be, um, do you find yourself playing differently?
Well, I mean, we've been doing that for years. That's honestly the preferred way of recording now. They're
Really?
doing it in stripes, or if you're from England, you call it stems. But they, we used to call them overdub sessions. They do the strings during the day, then they bring the brass in at night,
No.
and maybe it saves a little money because the brass would only have to be there for 3 hours instead of 6 hours. I think, from what I've been told, the real issue is control. They feel like if they record just the brass, I mean, we have the strings in our headphones, and we do our best to match intonation, phrasing, articulation. Sometimes we have to listen to it a couple of times to see what they did to match it. But when they're putting it all together at the end, they have more control if they have just brass and just strings. And so I really believe that's the reason.
Yeah. So in other words, now it's the music compilers who are really taking everything and making it right, as opposed, which is interesting because the sessions I've done, the sessions you do, you always want to come in and put your best foot forward and be on the mark every single time. And now it seems like, well, are those guys now doing it and I don't have to? You know what I mean? It's just kind of like, all right, so it's another thing. So I'll just come up, throw the shit up, and then be done, and they'll fix it. But
Well,
I can't play that way, and I can't do that. But I'm just wondering if the attitude now is a little more lackadaisical.
no, I would say no. It's a preference, and sometimes the composer prefers it this way, or an engineer will prefer it this way. There are certain composers who do not work this way. John Williams does not work this way.
Right.
Alexander Desplat does not work this way. James Horner did not work this way. Um, and we did some films for Henry Jackman. Wreck-It Ralph, Big Hero 6, Winnie the Pooh, and it was sort of considered, revolutionary. He put the whole orchestra in the room and recorded us the old-fashioned way. And then I heard these rumors that other composers wanted that Henry Jackman sound, which, well, good for him. And we love it when the whole orchestra's in the room because then you get to use your skills. You get to use your
Well,
listening skills and
yeah,
talk.
Absolutely, and the energy that's created with that many people focusing on one thing, it's just like sitting on stage in a symphony, which is an amazing feeling that that you can't get anywhere else. I mean, everybody's doing it, man, and it's a beautiful thing. And speaking of that,
Yes.
speaking of playing orchestral tuba, I think it's time we should bring our guest in. What do you think?
I am so looking forward to this.
I am too. He's totally awesome, man. Do you want to introduce?
Yeah. I would like to. Okay. Today's guest is someone I have known for a good long while. I was adding it up in the car. It's more years than I care to mention, but we met in the fall of 1983. I was a young graduate student at Wichita State University, and our guest, Eric Fritz, the famous Eric Fritz of now of Jalapa, Mexico, was living in Hutchinson, Kansas, which was just about 50 miles west of Wichita. And he tracked me down. He wanted to take lessons, and so Eric was probably the most phenomenal high school student I've ever had. He would drive in from Hutch, and we would have lessons. They would go for 2 and 3 hours.
It's awesome.
Part of it was talking, and a lot of it was playing. And anyway, Eric is an extremely personable guy, as you'll see. He then decided to come to USC, so he was in Los Angeles for a while, and we were, I think, fellow students and colleagues for a while. I remember going to some of his recitals, and I was teaching a little bit at SC in those days. And then I believe he went to Juilliard after that and studied with Warren Deck. And then he got this incredible job in Jalapa, Mexico, where he's been for quite some time. And he's made a life in Mexico, a fabulous life, by the way. And I told him I wanted to talk about the empire he's built. Now,
Exactly, exactly.
now, he, of course, was very humble and said he had not. But I will tell you that I visited once Eric. Eric got me a gig playing second tuba on Pictures in Jalapa. And so I went to Mexico and stayed for a week with him. I think it was 18 years ago. But he treated me like a king. He arranged a master class for me. He had people calling him from all over the phone rang all day long. And I thought, okay, Eric, you are the tuba mogul of Mexico. Um, he's probably laughing, but he's got the most incredible life. He's got playing with a great orchestra, and he's a great player. And I just can't wait to find out what he's been up to.
Well, I'll tell you what. Let's bump him in on this little thing. Check this out. Just awesome, man. Just so cool. How are you?
I'm great. It's a real honor to be here, guys. Hello, Doug.
Oh,
Hello, John.
oh, it's our absolute our pleasure, man. And thank you so much for taking a little bit of time out today. Um, Doug, all right, let's just get it out of the way. You asked, what about this tuba empire? I mean, everybody wants to know.
Tell us, tell us what. Okay, I know you have an orchestra position. I know you have a teaching position, and I know you also do other things that involve. Well, I saw Eric. I was in Mexico City in January, and we got to catch up a little bit. And he told me a little bit about what he's doing, and it's a lot. So before the pandemic slowed things down, what is your tuba world in Mexico?
Okay, well, I've been principal tuba of the Jalapa Symphony Orchestra, which is the oldest orchestra in Mexico. Okay, we just had our 91st anniversary,
Awesome.
and
Just awesome.
yeah, and it really is a great job. And I don't say it to brag. I say it because I feel blessed. I think it's the best job here. And there's 22 full-time tuba jobs in Mexico. So there's a real because of the news and because of a lot of things, a lot of people have idea that Mexico is just this big black hole, or it's just drug wars or whatever. And yeah, some of that's true, but there's a very vibrant artistic community here. So I feel very blessed to have one of the really good jobs here, and full-time orchestra, about a 42-week season a year. And then I have a position in Mexico City in the summers, which is usually 8 or 9 weeks. I usually can't do all of them, but that's the Minoria Symphony Orchestra, which the translation is Miners Orchestra. It's a long explanation why it has that name. And I can say that's probably the best orchestra artistically in the country. And it's just really great. And so I'm there's a lot of years where, I'm playing, 48 weeks a year in an orchestra, between Jalapa and then I go to Mexico City. I have 2 adjunct teaching positions. University of Veracruz, I have 3 students there this semester, and then the Institute of Music of the state of Veracruz, both of them in Jalapa, have 5 students there this semester. And then I do a fair amount of freelance work, a lot of late night buses to Mexico City to, a recording or to play a rock show or to play, just whatever, and with me, there's years I don't do anything. And then there are years it's like, I've got a dozen gigs, I've been really blessed to have performed with a dozen orchestras in this country. The vast majority of those are full-time orchestras. Premiered a couple pieces with those orchestras, some bands, a lot of master classes. There's the largest brass festival in Mexico, and really one of the most important ones in Latin America is called the Mérida International Brass Festival, which happens every 2 years in December in Mérida, Yucatan. I've been down there 4 times. So there are years I'm crazy busy, and then there are years that it's a little slower, but I usually have plenty to do. And I'm just really, really, really blessed that I just, I'm still getting a paycheck in COVID. So I'm really happy.
Well, speaking of that, Eric, and we were talking about this prior to the show starting, that full-time position is a government job.
Yeah. Almost all
and that's what I wanted to, if you wouldn't mind talking a little bit about that, because obviously that's not the way it is here in the States, but it's in other countries as well, that they're considered musicians to be that important, I guess would be the right way to put it, because you have a government job.
Yes. All of the orchestras, and I don't know how many orchestras there are in total, because there's a few chamber orchestras as well. I believe I mentioned the number 22 tuba jobs. I think that's the last I knew. But there are a few other full-time chamber orchestras as well, of course, no tuba. All of those, with the exception of one that I know, which are full-time jobs, is pretty much 99% of their money comes from government. And it can come from the state, it can come from the federal government. Mexico City Philharmonic actually comes from the city government. So, it's depending on the orchestra is depending on where their money's coming from. Now, the Jalapa Symphony Orchestra since 1975 has been part of the University of Veracruz. And this is the only orchestra that I know of. And well, I should preface and say there's a few orchestras in Mexico that are part of the university. Okay, the university, funds them, controls them, whatever. But we're the only one that are academics within the university, meaning that I'm a full-fledged professor in the University of Veracruz. And my job title, if it would be professor of biology, a professor of law, professor of whatever, I'm principal tuba Jalapa Symphony Orchestra. That's my full-time professorship. And, so Doug knows this, but one of the really great benefits we have are full paid sabbaticals like university professors have. And in my 28 years, I've taken off a couple times, left and gone someplace to do a sabbatical project. The first time, I've been here 10 years and I just really want to get away and just kind of I felt like I really kind of need to find myself as a player again and just kind of focus. And I just started a family, and as you know, John, when you have little kids, you don't practice so much, and you know how it is.
There's too much to do.
Right. And and I just felt like that I had kind of actually gone through some playing problems as well. And I just felt like I needed to kind of take a step backwards. So I actually took a year, fully paid, fully funded sabbatical for a year, moved to Switzerland with my family. I studied with Roger Bobo for a year. It was awesome. And then I was able to extend it a second year for paid for graduate studies. Yeah. So I was gone for 2 years.
Awesome.
Yeah. What was really cool was my paycheck stub where there's a little seniority pay area. And then there's a number of, like how many years of seniority you have. It said 10 when I left. When I came back, it said 12, So, and then I took another year, about 9 years ago or so. And I actually went and lived in Hutchinson, Kansas for a year. And it was a great project. I premiered a concerto that year and did a bunch of master classes, universities around the US, and did a bunch of concertizing in Mexico. I mean, that was kind of that was the project. It was to do solo playing. And so that's the Jalapa Symphony Orchestra. So that's one of the reasons why I'm still getting paid, because the university professors are still getting paid.
The reason why I brought it up is there are other countries in the world that have a similar program as far as how to treat their musicians and how they treat them as far as employees are concerned. And I find it such a shame that living with somebody who negotiates contracts for symphony orchestras and whatnot, as to what a hassle, man, to preserve the arts, and how other countries seem to say, no, this is what's really important. And I kind of wish all of us would take a step back, especially in these times when money's tight and stuff like that, that maybe it's time that we re-look at this thing and say, yeah, the LA Phil is important. The Chicago Symphony is important. And it's not about the board of directors who are running it, but that the city itself, the state, the country, the National Symphony has to go out and do fundraisers. It's the National Symphony. That makes no sense to me. If that's the way it's going to be in DC, then shouldn't the government make you guys employees? It sparks so many ideas in my head that as to why not this is happening, and the fact that now, I think, Doug, we talked about this too. How many symphony orchestras in the United States are going to be able to come back after this?
Well,
it's just Doug, we've been talking about this a lot. Who's going to be able to come back? Are the B orchestras going to make it? Are some of the A symphonies aren't even going to make it at this point?
Well, from what I understand, they're doing a lot of fundraising. Their supporters have been generous through this time. Some of the orchestras have taken care of their players, like Eric's orchestra, which I think is a good investment.
Absolutely.
What is an orchestra without its players? There's one I play with here in particular. The pandemic happened and they canceled the contract. And,
And what a shame.
What a shame. There are other orchestras, you make it to the top of your field and then this happened and there's, nothing. And all these players are moving back in with their parents. But bravo to the orchestras in Mexico for
absolutely. I think you're incredibly fortunate and incredibly smart, Eric. To be honest with you,
yeah.
It's and way to stay busy. We've got. I think it might be time because I love the way you play, man. You just sound awesome.
Thank you.
And can we do that tuba bass trombone thing, Quinn? So can you give us a little background? We're going to pull up the tuba bass trombone thing. And can you give us a little background on this piece, if you don't mind, Eric?
Yeah. Would you mind if I just commented really quickly on the first clip?
Absolutely.
Yeah. And the reason I want to comment on it is because that was Pacho Flores, the virtuoso, Venezuelan trumpet player. For those of you out there who don't know Pacho, immediately go out and buy his records. He's phenomenal. And anyway, that was a recording we did with the Minoria Symphony Orchestra September a year ago. And the thing that was really a pleasure with that, not only just playing with this great orchestra and great artist, was it was the first time that Deutsche Grammophon had ever did a symphonic recording in Latin America. Latin America, not just Mexico. And so that was a big deal. It was really a big deal. They brought over a lot of their own equipment. They brought their own tone meister and, a couple technicians and stuff. And it was a big deal. And Pacha recorded 5 trumpet concertos by Latin American composers. That was a phrase, just this crazy out of the blue tuba solo in the middle of the Paquito de Rivera tuba concerto or trumpet concerto. It's a tuba concerto in that moment, but we rehearsed it, we performed it on a concert, and then the next day we started recording it. But Paquito, he loves the tuba, man, and so he really put some fire into my pants. But there was just a little clip from a rehearsal one day. I guess what we're going to hear now is something that was actually just premiered today at noon. There's an initiative by a couple young Mexican trombone players who are really fine young players doing really well. I'm very proud to say both graduates of schools here in Jalapa. And they realized the need to catalog Mexican brass music, which unfortunately there's not a lot of it. More for some instruments than others, hardly anything for tuba. And they know through that process, then it's gonna generate more music. It's gonna promote people, to write music. Because there's a lot of young, good composers here. This piece that we're gonna hear, I think it's a great piece. The composer, he's a young composer I'd never heard of. He's still an undergraduate in Mexico City, the National Conservatory. Had no clue who this guy was. And I started listening and playing this piece like, oh my gosh, this guy's got some ideas, So the website premiered today and there was a virtual concert today, I believe, of 9 different duets. And this is one of the duets that was premiered. Different, trumpet, trombone, horn, trombone, just a bunch of different things. And this is the one that they asked me to do. The young gentleman playing trombone, and it's tenor trombone. Even though he sounds like a bass trombone, he's got such a big sound.
I was going to say.
Yeah, no, he's a great
huge,
player.
Huge,
Alejandro,
man.
He's only like 26 or 27 at the oldest, but he's second trombone in the Minoria Symphony Orchestra, so that's where I've worked with him. And then he is also second trombone in the the orchestra of the National University of Mexico City. And really fine player. And so this premiered today, and this is part of this. It's called De Bronce, of brass in Spanish. And so it's a website that's out there, and I think it's really going to be cool. I think it's going to really generate some interest, some new music, hopefully, and then also hopefully we can find out about some music that already exists.
That sounds great, man. Hey, do me a favor. Make sure you send Quinn a link on that website, please. So we'll put it up. But we're going to take a listen to this piece right now in its entirety, okay, guys? So let it run, Quinn. Just awesome, you guys. Just awesome. And no, and seriously, compositionally, how fun is that? I
Yeah.
mean, seriously, that's
This
just
guy, this
fun.
guy's like 22, I think, or something, right? I mean,
Yeah.
he's a kid, man. And I mean, it's like, I just was blown away when he sent this to me, you know. I
I
was
mean,
just like, I mean, blown away. First of all, I thought, oh my God, this is really hard. You know, thank God for modern technology, right? You know, it's like,
seriously,
but
man. What horn were you playing on that?
that's my F2, but it's a Yamaha 822. It's just what Doug,
822?
Is that what you used to play, Doug? Yeah.
It is. It sounds beautiful. The low notes, my God.
I know. I was just gonna. Your facility between high and low is just wonderful to listen to, Eric,
Thank you guys. I appreciate it.
and incredibly musical too, man. That's the one thing on this recording that really blew my mind was there was some brashness there, but it was totally part of the musicality of it,
Right.
as far as that's concerned, and how you guys brought it back to this thing where it was just like, you know, just dude, you
Well,
just stuck that shit, man.
thanks. Well, I should share with you the name of the piece is called
Please do.
Encubiertos, which means covered, and it's essentially like two undercovered kind of like agents that are like looking for prohibited rhythms. That's the actual translation.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's totally awesome. So has this been published yet?
Oh no. I mean, like I said, we just made the recording last week. The premiere was online today. You know, that piece, like I said, these other duets, they were all short, you know, 2 to 3 minute duets, and just premiered today, and it was really great timing that I thought that'd be kind of fun to share and promote a little bit of what's going on. There's also with some other young Mexican brass players, and as you can hear, there's some folks that can play down here, you know.
No.
You know,
Dude,
so
dude on trombone is solid and almost machine, man. I'm just
yeah,
saying, he's just wow.
yeah, yeah.
That is amazing. Eric, just phenomenal playing. I, you touched on something I wanted to talk about, which was, you know, when I was in Mexico City, you were kind enough to introduce me to your friend who asked me to do a master class at one of the high schools there, and I was astonished at the number of music students and the quality, the depth, and the amount of work that there. I don't think if you haven't been to Mexico City, you just can't imagine the size of the city. And how many full-time orchestras are there in Mexico City?
Let me think. I got kind of. I think there's 4 full-time. Let me think. The Poli, the Philharmonica, La UFUNAM, La Nacional. Okay, there's 4 full-time symphony orchestras plus a full-time ballet and opera orchestra. So there's 5 tuba jobs there. Then there's a full-time chamber orchestra.
Sure.
And actually in Bellas Artes, which is downtown that you know, Doug, that you actually loved when I saw you, were sitting across the street from Bellas Artes.
Yeah.
That Bellas Artes houses 3 full-time orchestras, a chamber orchestra, then 2 symphony orchestras.
Wow.
And yeah, that's just Mexico City. The other thing I'd share very quickly, Doug, to my knowledge, there are 5 music schools that offer degrees in Mexico City as well.
I remember speaking with one of the teachers. She was a trombone teacher.
Marcia?
Yes. And she said, I said, what do your students do when they graduate? Which is a natural question for anyone who's been to music school in the United States. And her response put me on the floor. She said, well, we have a problem keeping our students in school because they get work before they graduate. They don't even bother to finish. There's so much demand for musicians. And I said, well, maybe I should move here. She said, oh, we love foreigners.
Yeah. Well, to interject one thing, and then I'll make a comment about that. One of the duets that was recorded and performed today as part of this project that I participated in was a young lady composer. Also, I mean, I don't know her, but looking at her on the video, she can't be older than 21, you know? So a really nice piece she wrote for Marcia, trombone player.
Right.
Marcia is to my knowledge, the first Mexican brass player to get a graduate degree in a brass instrument. Huh. That was 20 years ago or so. And then she recorded with a young lady who is the first Mexican brass player to get a doctorate in a brass player. So really, those two young ladies really kind of hit the machoism kind of Mexican mentality out of the ballpark because, but anyway, yeah. And we just had last year, to show you also how behind Mexico is in some ways still, we just had our first tuba player get a graduate degree in tuba last year. And he was a student of mine here in Jalapa, graduated from here, got a really killer scholarship to do a master's degree in Italy with Fossi. Oh, wow. But before doing so, and you'll appreciate this, Doug, I actually auditioned and won 3 graduate assistantships in the United States, but chose to go to Italy. But anyway, so really proud of him.
I don't think there's much choice there, to be honest with you. United States, Italy? Yeah, I'm going to Italy.
Yeah. I think the food was better. Yeah.
Yes.
So to kind of expound upon what Doug was saying a little bit, there's 2 kind of aspects of this keeping the kids in school. First of all, culturally, there just wasn't a lot of importance in getting a degree. That was the first thing. Second thing is getting a degree from any institution here, quite frankly, is way harder than like getting an undergraduate degree. To me, it's way harder than getting an undergraduate degree in the United States because you have to jump through more hoops. It's a little more bureaucratic, but you also have to do a lot of these schools. You do have to do an undergraduate thesis, even if you're doing a performance degree. There's just a lot more bureaucracy, a lot more red tape, and even just academically, it's a little bit more challenging. It's a little more kind of resembles more like graduate programs sometimes, what you got to do. So those 2 elements. Fortunately, the mentality of getting a degree has changed. And kids now are realizing the importance of getting a degree and understanding the world we live in, that the piece of paper can be important sometimes. As a matter of fact, the Jalapa Symphony Orchestra, because we're academics, we have professorships. The Jalapa Symphony Orchestra, you no longer can audition for the Jalapa Symphony Orchestra if you don't have at least a bachelor's degree.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's huge.
Yeah. Well, it is huge. And we fought against that for years. But I kind of get it. The big thing that we're still fighting with is, and we've so far as won, is I'm making them understand that you can't expect for a principal player to give them principal play to have a doctorate. So we're still keeping that one down because, the bureaucrats in academic are like, well, if they get full professor pay, they have to have a doctorate, right? It's like, yeah, well, but an orchestra doesn't work that way. So that's a whole other issue. But the other thing is what Doug was saying is there's so much work, especially in popular group, banda, salsa, there's so much freelance popular music here that, yeah, a lot of these kids, they can get out of school and go play. And in most cases, probably make more money than what they could in the average orchestra, actually.
Well, that's because there's gigs out there. There's actually
Yeah.
gigs,
Yeah.
right? I mean, and I've done it. I've spent some time in Mexico myself, and people love live music.
Yeah.
So, you know, that just means there's more. If everybody loves live music, then there's just gigs everywhere.
Right.
If you're willing to do them,
Right.
and the style of music. I don't think people realize how cosmopolitan Mexico really is. They think it's all just this. It's in some ways, I think it's more cosmopolitan than the United States, to be honest with you, as far as cultures, what kind of music people like, and the broad variety that is actually available there, and played well, by the way, played very well.
Yeah.
Well,
So
if I could comment, the first thing I noticed, I think the first thing any musician would notice on a trip to Mexico is that there is music everywhere, on the street, in the restaurants. And what a world where music is just a part of your daily life.
yeah,
Wouldn't that be nice? I was
yeah,
so impressed with that. Such a beautiful way of living. Eric, can I ask you? Way back when John and I started talking about this, the idea was we're going to call this quarantine creators. The question was, what have you been doing? Because I've talked to so many people who are doing such incredible things since March, since we got. Would you tell us what your life has been like since March?
Um, yeah. Well, March 18th, I think it was our last orchestra rehearsal. It was like a Wednesday, you know, and then all of a sudden, the red flag, oops, things are shutting down. I think it was probably like that most places. And went to immediate lockdown, of course, started doing all my teaching online, which has definitely been a huge challenge because the big problem I have is socioeconomically, most of the students, I mean, they have a cheap cell phone and that's about as good as it gets. Some of them might have a laptop, but forget about like a nice, USB mic or something like that, and so some of my students I actually achieved online teaching with, and I'm doing that at the moment. I'm using actually Teams through Microsoft is working. And then I have 5 of my students that I do daily videos because their internet connection is so poor. It's just absolutely just pointless to try to do something online with them. And so they record, 2-3 minute video. They're supposed to do it every day. Don't always do it, but they send me a video, and sometimes it's them playing scales, or sometimes it's a rechu, or sometimes it's part of a movement of a solo or whatever, and then of course I try to make a video back, answering them and maybe demonstrate something or talk about it or share something with them. That's been it. And then we try to do like a group call every couple of weeks. Again, the group master class a little hard because again, we can just barely have enough connectivity to kind of like to get everybody connected at the same time. So that's the first thing, is that it's been a real challenge teaching, but I did that for the rest of the last semester and this semester. The Jalapa Symphony Orchestra, we did nothing. Well, I take that back. Like in June, we did one of these, recordings. Everybody at home did something. Excuse me. But the Jalapa Symphony Orchestra really did nothing up until September live. And then we started playing concerts. I believe the 3rd week of September, no audience, recorded for further broadcast. Excuse me, gentlemen. All of a sudden, I got a little something there in my throat. And then the beginning of October, they started selling 250 tickets for a 1,300 seat concert hall, maximum 15 musicians at a time on stage, set far apart. I only have 2 things to play this entire fall. Fanfare for the Common Man, which I already did. and then a barber piece that I'm playing in 2 weeks. So the orchestra is working, and there's quite a few orchestras in the country. Not all of them are working in a similar capacity. There's a couple orchestras that are actually the whole orchestra is working, but they're still not letting an audience in. But the orchestras are kind of doing something down here. That's the other thing. I've participated in probably a dozen or more of these at-home recordings, with several things with the Minneries Symphony Orchestra. Actually, tonight I got to play Sleigh Ride, for the Minneries, Oompa Oompa, right? And did a online Sinzamaya, which they were supposed to sit. Yeah. Well, it was set at home, listen to the track, and then play your part.
Yeah.
The same guy who actually did the editing of the duet did the editing of the Sinzamaya. So I sound pretty good on it. So, yeah, I think that I think it was, if I count that as a performance, I think it was 52. I'm not sure where my Sinzamaya performance record is, but it's up there a ways. Anyway, so we did that, and so just a lot of that kind of stuff. Done a few online master classes. Did UT Arlington with Ed Jones here 10 days ago. Got another one coming up here soon. Just things like that. And I had COVID. I am a COVID survivor.
So
in flesh and blood.
Yeah, I gotta ask, man, because Doug and I are here in Los Angeles, and things are going just ape crazy right now as far as the numbers are concerned.
Right.
And Doug actually told me that you had COVID, and I was going, what? And I gotta ask you, man, because most of my family in Europe got it, and it wasn't pretty. And I got to ask you, man, I mean, were you just like death's door, or, I mean, can you kind of tell us how it was?
Yeah. Well, first of all, I would like to comment on how we got it. Didn't get it at the supermarket. Didn't get it because, I was out in public. Here's the irony. My wife and I actually drove to the United States for 8 weeks. We were careful. We were careful, but we still were with a lot of people, but still doing the distancing, hand washing, mask. I mean, we were being, pretty active, a lot of family. Came back to Mexico. 2 weeks later, went to Mexico City. This would have been the end of September. I had a recording session in Mexico City, 4 days of recording. One of the top-notch young Mexican trumpet players here. Guy's a beast. He has 2 principal full-time orchestra jobs. It's just how he does that, I have no clue. But yeah, he's just one of these kind of guys that just play 14 hours a day and still smile. Good friend of mine, Ignacio Cornejo. Keep that name in your ear, because he just recorded, which I think it's maybe the first of its kind, an entire solo recording with brass ensemble. And
Nice.
yeah, so we went into a studio and recorded that, and just, it was really nice. So it was my wife's birthday. It's like, okay, let's go to Mexico City, do the recording, do the birthday and everything. Well, basically, we went to a family member's apartment. There were 7 of us. Bam. And
No way.
yeah, in total of 8 of us got sick. My sister-in-law, who was one of the 7, of course, went home and immediately gave it to her husband. So of the 8 of us, I'll just say this, gets out of the way. My mother-in-law was one of the 8. She passed away on the 26th of October. She was 88. She is an official COVID death. And, no justification. She unfortunately was very weak, very severe heart condition before anyway. Doesn't justify it, but it is what it is. And she had a beautiful life, wonderful woman. Doug actually had lunch at their house and one time met her.
Okay.
Yeah. And so anyway, but of the other 7, Claudia and I were the sickest. Claudia's my wife, and we were not in death's door. We did not have to go to the hospital, though there was one night when our doctor was a little concerned and really thinking maybe we should go to the hospital. Basically, the worst symptom we had for about 10 days was deathly fatigue. I mean, like fatigue where you're in bed and you have to get up to go to the bathroom and you're weighing your options.
Dude,
I mean,
yes,
I mean,
I've been there.
yeah, it's just like, I mean, you know, a fatigue that I just didn't even dream could exist. I mean, I just didn't feel bad in the sense of aches and pains and that kind of stuff, because we were on, you know, high-end disinflammatories and antiviral and antibiotics and all this kind of stuff. We were pretty drugged out, but just the fatigue was unbelievable. So that was our main symptom for about 10 days. And then as the result of the COVID, we got a pretty bad case of pneumonia. And
so
yeah,
that's interesting.
Yeah.
Huh.
And you know, what I learned a lot about COVID, and we went to what I believe is a world-class pulmonologist in Mexico City. He's attended to 2,000 COVID patients, and he is, I don't know everything, he says, but I've learned a lot, you know. And so, you know, up until the day we went to see him, and this had been about 2 weeks after our initial symptoms, you know, we were still like staying in bed, really taking care of ourselves, not really doing too much. And he said, well, look, I think the virus is done. Whatever damage the virus has done, it's done. He says, you have pretty bad pneumonia. He says, the good thing is I can tell you have healthy lungs, you know, and that you're healthy people, and, you know, you're not overweight. You don't have any, you know, life-threatening diseases or anything, you know. And he said, so the first thing I need you to do is just get off your butts and start exercising as much as you can. And then my wife brought up and says, you know, it's really important. My husband's lungs, you know, it's part of his profession. Oh, what do you do? I play the tuba. And he goes, oh, play the tuba as much as you can. So I started playing the tuba. I played the tuba the first day for about 30 minutes at 7,400 feet. Yeah, on my new 6-quarter tuba.
Yes.
Yeah. So yes, it was like, okay, the guy who just had COVID, who had like major, you know, 54-year-old guy who had major pneumonia, picks up this big tuba. He still hasn't mastered at 7,400 feet. You know, that's
Dude,
that.
You're a warrior.
Oh,
you're
yeah,
a warrior, man.
I'm insane. So first day after about 30 minutes, I was just like a beached whale. I was like, oh my God, you know? And so it was crazy. And then I just worked it up, and within 2 weeks, within about 3 weeks or so, I recorded that duet.
That's my man. Way to go, man. Way to go.
So after 2 weeks of that first initial appointment, it's really important to note that, and I don't say this to brag, I say this because I just feel really blessed that, one, I'm healthy, and I'm just, you know, God's been good to me. And also my chosen profession has obviously helped in my recovery. 2 weeks went back, he saw another x-ray, and he just looked at it. He kind of looked at me, and he looked at the first one, and he goes, what did you do in these 2 weeks? And I said, well, I exercised like you told me to, and I played the tuba. And he says, I've never seen a 50-ish year-old man recover from such severe pneumonia so quickly.
And that's because you were honking your ass off,
That's
moving
right.
as much air as humanly possible that
That's
we've
right.
all been taught to do.
That's
that
right.
Nobody else does. So maybe the tuba is the cure.
Well,
think about that.
You want to hear something funny? Is the last appointment we had, which is the third one, is also very, very, you know, noticeable advancement in our recovery. And he was just like, you know, he said, do you mind if I take pictures of these x-rays and everything else? And I said, yeah. And I need to document this case. He says, I absolutely need to document this case. And one of the appointments, we actually talked about breathing exercises, you know, brass gym kind of stuff, you know.
Sure.
And I actually, which I've been doing with my wife. And so I make my wife's like, okay, you know, let's breathe, honey, you know, and it's been beneficial to her, of course. And And so he's like, wow, I'm gonna get a bunch of pulmonologists together and here, come and give us, a breathing class,
Are you serious?
Well, he said it jokingly. We'll see if it happens. But then he said in the last appointment jokingly that now he wants to buy a tuba. So yeah. So the tuba really has, I mean, it really has been, it's really come full circle in my life of been just this huge blessing, and
That's so cool.
it's going well. I mean, so fortunately we're doing really well. The doctor says we shouldn't have any long-term consequences from this.
That's what I was just going to ask you, because there's been reports of people having this, all that other kind of stuff. And I don't want to see you have something, man. It's just,
right.
Well,
thank you. I mean, the first thing he said, even up front, he says, okay, you guys have severe pneumonia. He says, because again, you're healthy, et cetera, et cetera. He says, I really think that, long-term we'll get rid of this and you guys will be fine. And so that looks very positive. Of course, he really told us this last time to be very careful not because of COVID, but because of, flu, this kind of stuff, we're going into that season. He said, oh yeah, get your flu shot.
System, whatnot. Right.
Right. Because our lungs, even though they're maybe 95% cured or more by now, they're just very susceptible to another germ or bacteria that could get in there. Right. So we're good. One thing I will tell you that I didn't understand, but this doctor explained to me was you hear of people, saying, well, they passed away from COVID, from a heart attack, or, they have kidney failure or some other damage in their body. So we asked him, we said, do you think we should have other organs in our body checked on, because you're the lung guy and you're dealing with our lungs, but is there something else? And he told us, no. He said, COVID always starts with the lungs. In his experience, and again, with 2,000 patients, he says, in my experience, and I'm going to, knock on wood and just kind of go with that as a pretty sure thing.
Yeah, I will.
That it starts with your lungs. And then basically when it gets past a certain threshold, when it's pretty much just destroyed your lungs, then it can, affect your heart, your kidneys, your liver, that kind of stuff. But fortunately, we were pretty sick that we didn't get past that threshold. So he said there would be no reason to believe that we would have any other damage in our body.
Well, that's just, I'm thank you so much for telling us the story. I'm glad that you've got professionals who know what the hell that they're doing. And also, man, that was probably the scariest thing for me, is that if I got it, what would be left? And if working your lungs out and doing that type of thing and just picking up the horn is the answer, then I think a lot of us are really cool as long as we're picking up our horns every day.
Yeah.
So
well,
yeah, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say very quickly, John, one of the things that I would add is that, my advice to people is, and this is what we did. And I think this was really key for us. The day that we felt bad, now our symptoms came on quickly and we felt pretty bad pretty quickly, So for us, it was maybe a little easier. We immediately called the doctor back in Jalapa and he immediately bombarded us with medication. And he told me, he says, Eric, this is going to be a bomb and it might seem like a lot. He says, but one of two things, because if you've got COVID, he says, we're already on it. He says, if you don't have COVID, you've got some bad bug that we want to kill anyway, So we did that. And then, one of the problems, one of the scary things with COVID is, as you guys know, there's people that go around for a week to 10 days and they've just got a little bit of sniffle, or they've got just this almost non-existent symptom. And then what happens is all of a sudden from one day to the next, they're really sick.
Right. And
what happens with those people, and this doctor told me, sadly, a lot of those people, they're the people a lot of times who die from it, because what happens is they don't have a lot of symptoms, but they have the virus, and the virus is just working on their lungs and they don't know it. I mean, I had no clue that my lungs were being wailed on. I didn't have breathing issues. I didn't have my oxygen level. No, I didn't. I was really tired. Right. I mean, I wasn't playing the tube in that time, but I mean, I wasn't I wasn't that kind of thing. My normal breathing was like 11, 12 breaths per minute. My oxygen was well above 90. I could walk up and down the steps. Yeah, I had felt a little winded because I was just so exhausted,
Right.
but I didn't have any pain. I had no cough. I really didn't have any of these pneumonia symptoms yet. My lungs were just, were being destroyed. Fortunately, I caught it at a time where we're cool. But I think what happens is people have very light symptoms. Week 2, 3 weeks goes by, and they don't realize that their lungs could be not always, of course, but could be seriously, affected, and they don't realize it. And then all of a sudden, one day to the next, they get really sick, and by that time, there's not a lot that the doctors can do. So it's a silent killer, and it's so unpredictable, and from one person to the next, totally different. This symptom happens first to this guy, but to the next guy, he never got that symptom. And then another guy, it's just like, there's no rhyme or reason to it. It's really crazy.
Well, I can tell you, I'm glad that you're fine, man.
Thank you.
And I'm glad your wife is well as well. It would be a drag because you're doing some great stuff. And, no, I'm serious. You're right. Tuba Empire down there, man. I'm telling you. But we're kind of running out a little bit of a time here. But here's the thing. I wanted to get into one thing. You sent us some solo stuff, and I would really love to hear some of that. What would be your favorite one?
Oh, I think I only sent one thing. It's a little bit.
Can we pull that up, Quinn?
Third movement of the Leroy Osmond third tuba concerto. Yeah, I think it's like around 13 or 14 or something like that. Quinn?
Yep, I have it.
Yeah, how long is it?
Or you can go kind of in the middle. It's like
it's
got a cool middle section too.
So go about halfway through and then to the end. Is that what you're saying?
Well, I think it's like 13 or 14, whatever I told him in the email. It starts the third movement.
Yeah. So, of course, the one guy I didn't introduce today is our producer, Mr. Tech Sergeant Quinn, taking care of all business for us. And he was lucky enough to be able to do this today, even though he got notes from ABC on a TV show he's been working on. So we're really happy that I tried to do, even though he's my son, he's one of the most professional guys that I know. And when it comes to this stuff, and I don't think I would do it without him. Can we pull that up, please? And do you want to set this up a little bit for us?
Okay. My sabbatical year in 2011, there's an American composer named Leroy Osmond, who you might or might not know. Mm-hmm. Highly published composer. He's like 75 pieces for band. He a lot of high school, college level band pieces. He was a music educator for many years in Texas, and he loves the tuba, but he's written some really interesting pieces, and he lived in Jalapa for a while. He's retired, lives in Mexico, and he heard me play a piece, and he just, after the piece, walked up, he says, "Man, I'm gonna write a concerto for you." And I'm like, "Well, that'd be really fun." And all of a sudden one day he walked up and he's like, "Here you go." And so during my sabbatical year, I premiered it and then played I think 4 times with 4 different orchestras. This is one of those performances. This is a semi-professional orchestra in Merida, Yucatan. And it's a really cool piece. String orchestra and pitched percussion and piano. And this is awesome. the third movement. No, yeah, the third movement, yes.
Okay, let it run, Quinn. Yeah, man. Awesome. Just awesome.
Oh, well, thank you. I have to say, those low pedal C's, fortissimo with accents, that's what's written. Okay. I mean, that's, Leroy's like, okay, I got, you're a tuba player. So I got to make the tuba player in you happy, so yeah. So anyway,
No, that's fantastic playing, man. Just really. And Doug, there's probably not another piece out there where it's strings, no other brass, no other anything, just strings and pitched percussion, right? That would be like it's only one, right?
That I know of. Yeah, I'm scanning, but I think
because what an absolutely great idea.
it's perfect.
It truly is. The timbre differences, the way that one thing that I really enjoyed was how the violins were playing the same lick, and then you come back and play it similarly to the violins. And I think that's one thing that people don't realize that the tuba is great at, is the emulation of string instruments. We're taught from when we're this high, you got to play like a bass, got to play like a bass, you got to sound like a bass, and that's the whole thing. Especially De Meistersinger. I heard that every day of my life growing up. Play with the basses, got to sound like the bass. And now, that's what I do for a living, is sound like a bass. So it's just wonderful writing, first of all, and almost ethnic in nature, because there's a whole bunch of rhythmic things that were going on there, and not to mention also too the way the orchestration was. I would love to see a copy of that.
It's published. And I know that Leroy, he's a very good friend of mine. I'll send you guys a copy of that. But he's.
Man, I would love to see that, because that looks like not what do I want to say? Not only great music, but super fun
and hard.
What's wrong with that?
Well, I don't know. I choose to play these really hard things. So. The first couple of movements physically is the most challenging thing I've ever had to play, not technically. The third movement is that last movement, that's the technical movement. But the first two movements, it's just like basically, like in the first two movements, there's like 14 high Gs and you're just like hanging up there, it's just like, and I played that piece that Leroy heard me play. Do you guys know, great piece I want to promote actually, Kenneth Bales. He used to teach. He's retired now. He was University of Nebraska in Omaha. He wrote a piece for Craig Fuller called "The Rocks." It's a great piece. 4 movements. Like one movement is "Slippery Rocks." One movement's called "Dirty Rocks." It's very cool. But there's a bunch of high stuff in that. And so Leroy heard me perform that with an orchestra, and he's like, "Oh, yeah, I'm gonna write something for you." And oh wow, you got great high notes. And I'm like, "Oh God." Oh no! And,
see what happens when you're good.
Well, no, that's what happens when you have composers in the audience, So.
Yeah, no shit, man, no shit. Well, hey, I hate to say this because I'm still having fun, but we're kind of running out of time here, and thanks so much for being here today, Eric. What an absolute joy. Love the stories. Thank you so much for the COVID thing, Doug. You got anything else, man?
Well,
Shostakovich.
If all my students did as well as you, wow. Just amazing, Eric. I try to keep up with you, but just to see these videos is amazing. And, I still remember you when you were 17 or 16 or whatever. And I can't even believe all these years have passed, but what an incredible thing you're doing, and advancing the art of our instrument, and just being a good guy, an incredible player. You've truly made the world a better place, and it's just phenomenal to watch. And thank you so much for sharing today on our show, and getting your message and your personality out there, because it's real important. Thank you. Just so positive and upbeat and creative, and it's just awesome to know you. And
Yeah, man.
thank you so much.
Well, I just very quickly thank you, gentlemen. It's really been an honor to be here, and I was mentioning to John and before we went live was just, you guys have had some really heavy hitters so far as guests, and so I had some big shoes to fill here, and so it's an honor for me, and also Doug, to you too. I mean, I've said it to your face a million times, but it's public. I very well could end up being a used car salesman if it had not been for you. Not that would have been bad, but I mean, I'm so grateful that God put you in my path, and you inspired me, and you encouraged me, and you were patient, because I mean, I couldn't play the tuba with Jack when I started taking lessons with you, and you were incredibly patient, and just have been a great friend and a great mentor, and I appreciate you very, very, very much, and always will. Thank you, sir.
Hey, we're gonna end the show today with a little Shostakovich 7, right, man? Fourth
11.
Shostakovich, is it 11? That's the fourth movement.
Yeah.
That we got up. So I want to end with that, and that'll be Eric playing with the orchestra. And once again, everybody out there, thanks so much for showing up with us. We really enjoy doing this every week, and we'll be back again next week. I think we've got pretty cool guests lined up. I want to really thank again Mr. Eric Fitz for all his time and effort today, and continued success, my friend.
Thank you.
And get back to us next week. I think we're going to go Saturday or Sunday next week, right, Doug? Which one?
How about Saturday?
All right, let's do Saturday. So we're going to do another episode on Saturday, probably around 3:00. And thanks everybody for tuning in. We're gonna do a little Shostakovich 11 on the way out. And everybody have a great day. Okay, peace to all.
Thank you.